What we're going to cover today is using Platform Builder, which is the platform generation tool for Windows CE.NET, integrating the web server component and also a custom application that's going to utilize the web camera. What we'll next target is the emulation environment, which will allow us to test our platform right on our PC without additional hardware, followed up by debugging that platform using the shared source that we ship inside the box of any version of Windows CE.NET. If you want to do this demo at home, what you're going to need is Windows XP Professional, and this will be your host operating system. With that, you can go down and download the Microsoft Windows CE.NET Emulation Edition, or order the evaluation kit, or get the full package product. Once you've got that installed, you'll need a suitable USB web camera. Anything that is Windows XP compatible will be sufficient for this demonstration. Also get the Microsoft Windows XP Power Toy, known as Timer Shot, and we'll be using this application to take pictures from the Windows XP host operating system and copy them over to our emulation environment. Okay, let's get started. What we're going to do next is load up Microsoft Windows CE.NET Platform Builder. This is our platform generation tool that comes with any version of Windows CE.NET. What you see here in the middle is what we call the Start page, which contains links to the latest information on support, online communities, and what's new. You can also open a new workspace, and you can also create a new platform. When you do this, what will pop up is what we call the New Platform Wizard. From here, you can specify some of the canned configurations that we have for Windows CE.NET. This is to help you get started creating any of the base configurations. By clicking Next, you'll see a list of the supported processors that you have installed. Since I'm using the free Emulation Edition, you'll note that we just have the Emulator support listed here. With the full or evaluation product, you can install additional processors that Windows CE.NET supports. The next screen is what we call the Device Configuration and Platform Configuration screen. From here, you can choose some of the template designs that we have. In this case, I'm going to use the Internet Appliance. I'll give this a sample name. And you can see in the bottom here, it's going to create it in what we call the WinSroot directory, which is in this case WinCE 410 under the public subdirectory, and it'll create the MySample web camera application there. The next step is it's going to list the type of platform I'm creating. Internet Appliance, the basic configuration is good enough here. The next step is a trimmed down version of the catalog features that apply most to the Internet Appliance. These are some features that I'm actually not going to need for the platform that we're creating, so easily enough I can go ahead and deselect them right here. Next it's going to ask me about the networking configuration options, and you see you can expand some of these options here to see exactly what's being included or recommended for this platform. In this case, since I'm using emulation, I don't need Bluetooth, I probably don't need the dial-up networking, and since I don't have wireless, I can go ahead and just deselect this option as well. I can hit Next here. And that will complete the build process. This is the Finish window where I can choose additional build options, such as automatically building my debug or release platform, or I can specify additional build options. I'm going to hit Done so the platform is created. We'll see here in the bottom that Platform Builder is now working at generating the components based on the selection we've made through the wizard. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see what we call the feature view. This is generating a list of all the components included in our platform so far. You'll see that there are three nodes: device drivers, which are specific or global to any of the Windows CE.NET platforms you make; the emulator, specific to the emulation platform, where you can see we have such things as audio, serial, storage, and display. And these are drivers unique to this platform. Followed by what we call the Internet Appliance node, and this lists all the components that are global or unique to the Internet Appliance. As you can see, we can expand different components to get different features. Right-clicking on one, you can actually do a feature dependency, which is a very efficient way of seeing what is dependent on a feature or what it's a dependency of. So if you need to add or remove additional components, you can easily do this by just expanding the nodes on the desktop. What I'm going to do next is actually add the web server component to my catalog. So what I'll do is right-click and bring up the catalog view, which is available by default. In this case here, you can see that we've already got the web server selected, but if I wanted to find additional components, you can just use the find command and search for something like games or any of the other technologies that Windows CE.NET supports for you. In this case, I know I need the web server, so we'll go ahead and click on that one. And easily enough, what you can do is just drag and drop that into your configuration. What you could also do is actually add your own components as well. Using a CEC editor, what you can do is manually specify your own components and have them show up in the catalog. So let's go ahead and drag the web server over. And we'll see that what's just happened here is a notification window. This is a new feature to Windows CE.NET 4.1 to let me know of any security concerns that may be with this component if it's not configured the right way. I've already read through this, and I note that I can actually get additional information on this, and I can figure out how to configure my server to be the safest it can for my device. I'll accept this notification and click on the close button so I don't have to see it again. And easily enough, we can see that the web server component was added to the platform. What we're going to do now, though, is that we've got the web server on the desktop, or on the configuration. What we can do is actually add our custom application in. You can do this by adding separate components that you've customly created very easily in Windows CE.NET. So it's very easy to add in your own specific applications or utilities. In this case, I'm going to hit Project and go to Insert, and then Existing Project. I've already got my application created and built, so what I'm going to do is specify this here in the dialog that's popped up. You can see that I've got a webcam image.pbb file. And what this is going to do is create an additional node here on my feature view called User Features. If I double click on that, I can see that I got access to the workspace environment, which takes me over to the correct environment here. By expanding it, I can see the different source code files that are located inside. One of the things that I know I need to modify is located under the WinProc component. So let's double click on that and pull this up. I'm going to close down the catalog feature since we don't need to add anything else in, and this will give me more room with my source code window. So in here, I know I'm looking for a .jpg file. This application is going to be used to copy an image from the release folder, which we'll talk about here in a second, and I'll enter that here now, and copy it over to a different directory known as in the web root, which is part of the webcam or the web server application, and it's going to rename it to image.jpg. So this application is doing just a simple function of taking a file from one directory and copying it over to the web root folder as another file name. So it's a very simple application, almost similar to what you would consider a Hello World application. So you can see here, again, copying from the release folder as my pic.jpg and into the web root folder as image.jpg. So what I can do here is just make sure the file's looking good and save it, and then close the file out. What we're going to need to do next is actually go and take a look at some of the other files that we need to modify to further customize our platform. What you can do here is actually see some of the other files that you can modify, such as expanding the webcam files and seeing some of the different source files here. So all within Platform Builder, you can modify much of the platform workspaces that you're working with, making a very integrated way to work with Windows CE.NET projects. What I need to do now, though, is actually go to the parameter view. Parameter view is used to specify the custom platform configurations options that you would like to set. In this case here, the first one I want to modify is called project.reg. This file gives you a lot of the registry options that you can set for your default configuration. You can see here that I have some of the options such as the ident tag here. This is used to give the machine a unique name. In this case, it's using the default name, which is rather boring for what we're doing, so we're going to go ahead and change that. What I can just do here is I've got some text already available. I'm going to select the information here, and what I can do is actually just copy and paste in the information I do want. So we can see here we've gone ahead and replaced the ident field, and we've given it a name of my sample webcam, pretty easy enough, and that's going to be the unique name for this device when it turns on. In case anybody else sees it on the network, they can see that it's a webcam device by giving it the description. What we've also added here is a custom homepage for Internet Explorer. reason we have this is so when you open up Internet Explorer, it's going to go straight to the web page that's running the web server. In this case, that's the start page tag, and we see that it's pointing to, let's go ahead and change it to the real device name, which is my sample webcam, which matches the ident tag that we used a second ago. So this is very easy in just a few seconds to customize the home page and the device name by just modifying some fields in the project.reg file. So since we've actually got a web page, what we need is actual files to create that web page with. So what we're going to do here is open up the project.dat file. And this is used to actually, similar to upgrading a device, it will tell it to replace files that are already in the directory. So let me just paste in the files that I know we're going to replace. You can see here that this is just a couple lines of code. And what it's going to do is take the default.htm that's already in the directory from the web server and use files that are in the Windows directory to replace it with. So it's going to look for this Windows whack frame.html and also Windows/CE logo.gif. And it's going to copy those over into the webroot directory. If you're familiar with any desktop web server applications, you know that there's a separate directory where all the web content is hosted out of. So basically what this is telling us is take the frame.html and copy it over into the webroot directory and call it default.htm and CE logo.gif. So we actually haven't even created those files yet. So what we should go ahead now is actually put those files into our project. So we've got the information here, and these are the two files that we're going to be looking for. And what we'll do here is just take a look and see where those files are and drop them into our platform. Since we don't need these files anymore, we can go ahead and close those windows and pull up our local system here. We've already created the frame.html code and the CE logo.gif image. What I'm going to do is select these here. And just going ahead and doing an edit and copy. I'm going to move these into one of the directories in our platform configuration that at the build time it's going to be copied over to what we call the flat release directory. So right now I'm in the WinCE directory, again WinCE 410, public, my sample webcam, and then we dive down into the WinCE 410 directory again, Emulator, which is of course the platform we're working with, Oak, and the files directory. This is where a lot of the custom components are going to be saved so they can get copied over at build time. So this is very build specific, so you don't have to worry about it interfering with other platforms you're creating. So we pasted the files in here, and we can see that they're now part of this directory. But what we need to do next is let Windows CE know that these aren't files that we just want to sit there. We want them integrated with our platform. Let's go back to the Platform Builder environment and close down this window since we don't need it. And the next one that we're going to be looking at is called project.bib, the BIB file. And we can see here that it gives you a few options to include different modules or different files. I've already got the content that I need, so what I'm going to do here is just go and select that and get that ready to paste into the environment. So again, we've got the frame.html file, which is going to be copied into the flat release directory as frame.html. When it's building the image, that translates to the Windows directory as frame.html and also CE logo.gif. There's many more flags and options that you can use for this command here, and you can locate that inside the help file. I'm going to go ahead and save this and close the window down, just since we got everything figured out. But let's first walk through everything we've done. First, we've got the bib file that's saying to include the frame.html and the CE logo.gif file. And you can see that that's included here under the WinCE root under the sample platform we've created in the files directory. Any other files you'd like to add, you could also specify in the bib file, and they'd be included in your image as well. Next, what we did is actually modify the dat file. This is just kind of an advanced copy and copying feature that will say, take the files that are in that release directory, in this case on the platform is going to be in the Windows directory, and copy them to another location, and you can even rename them if you need to as well. Now this is done as static files, and this is why we're not doing this for the web camera images that we're going to be generating. That's why we needed a separate web copy image tool that we imported earlier. Since these files are static, this is a very powerful way to make it part of the actual image itself. Next, what we did is that we modified the project.reg file. Again, this is the registry-specific information for this platform where we customize the machine name and also the web page default. So it's very easy for the end user to get this device up and running. So we're going to close in all these windows so they're out of the way. And after that, we're pretty much ready to go ahead and generate our platform. So we've got our users feature customly added in here as web copy image. And again, we'll talk about that more in a minute. And what we're going to do is just save everything to make sure everything got done correctly. And from here, what we can do is build our platform. Earlier on, we said that we're going to be doing a debug version of this so we can use the shared source code to walk through. There's two different versions. The debug IC is a little more verbose in what it will do. Adds a few more connections into Platform Builder so you can debug your application. What it can also do is choose the release version, which your customers or yourself can use to see how it would work on a real device. It'd be a little faster, but you wouldn't get some of the advanced features. Let's go ahead and click Build and then Build Platform. What this is going to do is take all of our customizations and then start linking that into what we call the nk.bin image file. I'm going to expand this bottom window here, which is used to show this any of the status of the build or debugging windows that are going on. We can see here that it's started to kick off what we call the build process. This can take about 10 to 15 minutes depending on your PC and how many components you've chosen. If you notice down in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got a building icon that is showing that it's doing a process right now. And again, this will take a little while to do. So while that's going on, let's look at the timer shot application. This is a power toy that we've had on our desktop PC that we downloaded from Microsoft.com for free. What this image is going to be doing is actually just saving every second images from our web camera that's Windows XP compatible. So if we expand the Options tab, we can see there's a few different things that you can set. Right now what we're going to be doing is calling the picture mypic.jpg. You'll remember from earlier when we were looking at some of the files, that was what it was going to be referencing in web copy image to copy over. All I need to do is specify the flat release directory. This is a common directory shared between the desktop and our emulated image, which makes it very easy to update files without having to reload or recompile your image. I'm going to give it the correct name of mysample webcam, and then what that's going to do is save it into the correct directory. In the release directory, there's actually two subfolders that you can use. Since we're building the debug folder, we're also going to have to be sure that we specified the debug environment in this path here. So just by choosing this and going to the end, you can see that we did choose the debug folder. So we're going to apply these settings, and we're going to put timer shot behind us for a second here, and we'll go on to see how this actually is all going to fit together. So here's kind of a graphical representation of what is going on. To start off with, we have our web camera application. What that's doing is actually using timer shot to save images onto our host operating system. And what we did manually is specify the shared release folder. And again, that was the path under the wince root that's copying images into the debug folder for our platform. Windows CE.net can see that release folder as well. So what it's going to do there is use the web copy image application to copy that into the web server folder, because again, that's just much like the desktop is a separate folder for security reasons and for just keeping everything isolated. So easily enough, we've got that going over where on our host PC and our emulation environment, you'll be able to see that we can view the image even though it's coming from the separate environment. There's also ways to configure your emulation environment that you can use it so other devices such as your PC or another hardware device would be able to see that. So again, you've got everything going from the release folder into the web copy image app and the web server so other devices can display it. So we switch back to the platform builder environment where we can see by the bottom right corner that the building icon is still telling us it's working. This is going to take quite a few minutes if we were to watch it for the full process, so we're going to try to speed this up. So we can see here that the build process is almost done. And what it'll do is actually generate us a full error report here. And in this case, we have no errors and no warnings. So we've done a really good job today. We can see that if from the speed up that there's actually a lot of text going through. So if we just scroll up quickly, we'll see that that was actually quite a bit of text. So again, there was no errors and no warnings. So that's the most important part. But by scrolling up, you can see there's a lot of data that if there was an issue, you can actually go through and reference exactly what happened or what went wrong. So this goes on for quite a while, and it tells you that it's pulling in the different components and anything that's happened there. We don't need any of this, so we'll just go ahead and clear that out. So like we talked about earlier, this was going to be used for the emulation environment. So let's talk about how we can customize that. That's under the Target menu, and I'm going to go to Configure my remote connections. Using the Emulation Edition, by default, we're going to have the emulator selected, since that's the only item that you can target using this version. So here you got the kernel transport, which is used for debugging, and I'm actually going to configure the download mechanism itself. You can specify many things, such as the resolution and color depth, and also the skin file, which we'll come to in just a second here. I'm going to specify the WebPad skin, but we'll go into more details on this in just a second. Other options that you can configure are the size of RAM that you like to use. In this case, 48 meg should be good for the image that we've created. Host key, which is used for different information to switch platforms. And here's another interesting option that's new to CE.NET 4.1. You can have a NAT, which is similar to your internet connection sharing, or if you wanted other people to have the ability to connect into your device so you can do additional testing such as voice over IP, you could have chosen the virtual switch. Other options is that you can choose the serial port, and you can also choose to log to a file or directly to a COM port. One of the more interesting things you can actually try is using ActiveSync on your desktop and add that component into CE.NET. Serial port 1 could be used for the emulator, and you could use serial port 2 on your computer to be the ActiveSync connection device there, so you can actually talk to each other. So we're okay with these defaults here. We're going to click OK. Now let's get actually downloading this image here. We can see that we're using a debug build. So it's going to take a few seconds to load. So while that's loading, what I'm going to do is show you some of the skin file information that we added in a second ago. So the skin is actually made up of 4 different files. The first is the XML file, which is basically the parameters for the skin that we're using. We can see here that it looks just like regular XML with such tags as the title bar, which will be put at the top of the device, and also the display position. This is where it's going to start drawing the emulator image, and also the width and height of that image from the starting point. So in this case, we're going to be starting at a position of 100 by 62, and then drawing the emulator size of 584 and 435 with a color depth of 16. And then these are the 3 files it's going to use to actually show the images. First, there's the mapping image, which is a color code that shows me when I hit some of the buttons what image to show on the down image. And we'll give you a better example of that in just a second here. Going further down, you can see that we have some additional options. These are the actual buttons that you can hit. Looking at this first one here, we have one that's going to look for this color code, and we'll show that on the map file in just a second. And when I hover my mouse over it, or click it, I will get the key X command. You can actually get the full range of keys from the help file. So let's take a look at these 3 files. This is what we call the up button. You'll notice that the buttons are slightly lighter, and it shows the device here. You'll notice that this is the 100 by 62 position that the emulator is going to start drawing, and the width and the depth that it's going to actually start drawing at. So that's where CE is actually going to be loading from. The down button, let's notice that the buttons are now slightly a darker color, giving it a feeling that they're being pressed down. So there's the 2 images showing both the up and the down state. What we're going to use is the color map file, which has each button as a specific color, and we saw the color codes in the XML file earlier. So when it sees that file, it knows to show the transparency between the up and the down bitmap buttons. So let's take a look at this. Here's our emulated skin, and we can see that it's got CE running on the inside here. What I'm going to do is double click on the Network Connections tab, which is very similar to Windows XP. When I double click on this, we're going to see a dialog pop up that's telling me my IP address, which is a very easy way to figure out what's going on in the system if I wanted to be able to ping it or communicate with it. In this case, we can see that we're actually just talking with the PC, and it's giving me that address there, which is similar to what you'd get on an internet connection sharing device. I'm going to click the Start button and run. What we're first going to do is load the web copy image application that we've put in. The reason we're doing this is so it can start communicating with the desktop and copying that mypic.jpg that timer shot is taking for us and start copying it into the web folder. So we started timer shot before, and now let's go ahead and start Internet Explorer. Now this takes a few seconds to load because back on the platform builder it's loading different symbols and is actually making sure that it can load correctly and doing additional debug steps. So if you're using a retail image you get much faster performance, but in this case here we can see that we're actually getting a lot more debug output. Platform builder's look has slightly changed since we're doing debug mode. We've got additional windows. But again, the bottom one is still basically for the debug output or the status of what's going on. Taking a quick look, we can see that it's actually copying files over the mypic.jpg from the desktop. So we know that the my webcam application is running correctly. Switching back to the emulator, let's go ahead and make sure Internet Explorer is loading. We'll double click on that. And up will pop Internet Explorer 5.5. So you get a really rich web browsing experience with Windows CE.net because the web browser is basically the same as what was shipped for Windows 2000 with Internet Explorer 5.5. So now you've got a very similar experience if you're browsing web pages on one of those PCs or right here in Windows CE.net. Again, it takes a few seconds to load, but one of the things that we'll notice it's actually going to be trying to do is using the new home page we sped in our project.regs file, which again was my sample webcam. So we know that the settings for the device name and also the setting for the custom home page took when we saved all our files and rebuilt our image. Right now it's loading up the web page, which we use the project.dat file to copy over from frame.html to default.htm. And in just a second here, after the debugger is finished loading the symbols for this, we'll see the image come up. So there we go. We can see that we've got the Windows CE.net logo, and we can also got the web camera image there. Again, it's pointing at the Microsoft cups that we've got sitting. Just to show you that this is updating, how about we go ahead and start moving those cups around so you can see how the image is actually updated. If you look at the bottom here, you can see that it's actually just reloading the page every few seconds to get the latest image. And you can see that the cups have started to move, and there it goes again. So that's just showing how the webcam is being updating live images almost every second, with just a little bit of delay between the file copies that's going on. Let's go ahead and close down the web browser since we don't need to use this anymore. Next, what we're going to show is how you can actually use some of the advanced debugging features. Since we don't need web copy image open anymore, we can go ahead and close that as well. Before going into the debugging step, though, we're going to talk about the release folder. The release folder, again, is what is shared between the desktop and the Windows CE.net emulated image. Very powerful way to be able to search and copy files between the two share points, so you don't have to reflash your device or rebuild your image. It takes a few seconds to load up because in the release folder there's many files that are actually generated into your platform. So right now what it's doing is actually talking back to the desktop using the platform builder connection and being able to populate the file contents here. We can see that the files are starting to load. And again, the feature that we're going to be looking for is called mypic.jpg. Again, typically this would be a lot faster if you weren't using a full debug connection where we've got a lot of information going back and forth between the two. Oh, and at the top there we can see we've got the mypic.jpg file listed right there. And just to show that this is similar to what's going on in your desktop side, what we're going to do is take a look at the folder that's located over there. If we jump there, we can see we've got the same set of files. We've got mypic.jpg, the mydocs, and the mysample file. And again, that's located under your release directory under Emulator Debug, since that's the platform we're working with right now, and that's where it's sharing. Going back quickly, we can see that we've got the same files, the mypic, the mydocs, and the mysample. Just to show that this is quite a live update, what we're going to go ahead and do is delete the picture from here. So we can see that dynamically it's getting updated with the section in the release folder. Going back over just takes a second to probably refresh. Let's see what happens though. And there in just a few seconds, it's refreshed the directory structure, and you can see that the mypic.jpg is gone. So a really great way to share those files between the emulation and desktop environment. Let's go ahead and close down the emulator, since we're going to actually do some more advanced debugging when we start the emulator. We're going to walk through to see how that shared release folder is working together. So I used the power button on the skin, which was interactive, to close it down. And now I just disconnected from the device in Platform Builder. And you can see we get back to the classic view of having the feature catalog. I just cleared the debug output since we don't need it in this session. And what we're going to look at is the Storage Manager component. You'll see here what I'm doing is expanding some of the additional source code that we ship, known as shared source for Windows CE.net. The file I know I'm going to be looking for is called fsdalloc.cpp, and we're going to pull that up here. And I know that it has something to do with the alloc code, so let's do a search for that. Now right in here I'm using the source code to reference what is going on. I'm kind of skipping ahead because I've already referenced this code and know exactly where I need to start, is on this line here. This is a part of code where we're actually going to see how the file system is going to be sharing between the different areas of the file system on the desktop and the PC and the emulated image. What I just did is right-click and chose to set the breakpoint. I'm going to close down these files and quickly show you how now that if I just go back to download and initialize, it's actually going to reference that source code, and when it hits that part of the code where it's making that connection, it's going to actually break in the debugger and load that source code again and let me walk through it. So again, we've got the emulated image running here, and in just a second it's going to make that connection with the debugger and hit that breakpoint. There we go. So you can see we're back in the debugging view of Platform Builder, and it's hit that one line of code that we specified, and it's shown us by the red circle with the yellow arrow. This is the very similar to the Visual Studio debugging environment where you can set different tracking options. You can also see all the variables that it's returning, and also be able to use that for more advanced debugging. Just by hovering over some of the options in the source code, you can get the parameters that it's returning and use those to track or watch later. What I'm going to do is drag in the debugging toolbar so you get to see some of the options that you can do, such as being able to step into or step over some of the code. In this case, what we're going to do is step into this and see what's going on. And you can see right now we're walking straight through the code. So this is a very easy way to reference what's going on. I can set additional breakpoints by tracking some of the variables and doing some more advanced debugging features. And again, if you're familiar with Visual Studio debugging, you're going to find Windows CE.net Platform Builder also easily to use as well. What I'm going to do next is just tell it to stop debugging so it will continue loading the image. And from there on, we can see that it'll load Windows CE.net Platform Builder debugging features, but it's not going to be as connected to the debugger right now. So again, we were able to see just by using the source code how easy it was to set a breakpoint and walk through the source code as we were going through the process of loading our image. Windows CE.net actually ships over 1.5 million lines of source code, including components to the kernel, file system, parts of the Internet Explorer, such as an IE sample, so you can customize the browser, and also different components as well. So just by using the source browser, which we just showed here a second ago of locating source code, it's very easy to locate the components for things we do ship for. One of the examples that we've done here is actually add in the web server, and just by having the expanded node, you can see there's additional source code to look in there as well. And also you can easily pull in the source code you've used for your own custom applications as well. So very easily today we've been able to create an image by using the web server and pulling in our custom application, utilizing the shared release folder, and also changing our parameters of our platform to customize the files that we're pulling in, such as the frame.html and celogo.gif, using the dat file to copy those over to overwrite the files. Again, since these were static, we were able to do that with this case. And project.reg to customize some of the unique features such as our name and internet start page. So what we've done is a full end-to-end process today. We got Platform Builder installed on our Windows XP host system and configured our web camera, which was XP compatible, and downloaded the TimerShot PowerToy UI. That's all done on the desktop side to provide the images into the flat release directory that's utilized both by Platform Builder and the Windows CE.net emulated image. Using the device wizard, we were able to create a platform and integrate the web server component as well as our own custom application. So by doing that, it was very easy to add in the different aspects of what was going on. Using the debug process, we were able to use a shared source code and then integrate that into our environment to see what was going on when the file system was loading.